This is one of the best Black Clover chapters of all time. It's official, Yuno's on the level of a Wizard King, surpassing even Julius Novachrono. Some of my predictions have been confirmed once again. For example, the paladins seem to be able to use multiple magic abilities. And also the singularity of wind and star magic in terms of the evolution of Sylph into something beyond the normal wind spirit. Or that Yuno would be able to break the laws of nature. Yuno literally used a spell with a time attribute or time affinity, or at least something that allows him to manipulate time or reality. This spell, which is called Neverland, a reference to Peter Pan. I will explain the reference in this video, it goes very deep. Surpasses any time magic spell that a typical time mage can use. Lucius is no longer able to use time magic because Yuno has removed time. Time no longer exists in Yuno's Neverland. But it's a bit more complicated than that. Remember the dungeon where Yuno was able to stop time for some reason? A little over a year ago I theorized that Yuno might have used a time magic spell. Then I replaced that theory with the theory that Astaroth might have been the one who used that time magic spell and prepared the dungeon so that Asta and Yuno could become stronger. Now of course everything is much more complex with Neverland. I know it's tempting to say that Yuno was the one who used that time magic spell in the dungeon, and many will tell you that's definitely the case. But that is not necessarily the case. The spell in the dungeon and Neverland are two completely different spells. The spell in the dungeon stopped or slowed time, where Neverland removes time. Those are two fundamentally different effects. Maybe Neverland has nothing to do with time manipulation, but reality manipulation. Also, Neverland is based on things that Yuno didn't acquire until years later, and yet we can't deny that Neverland proves that time affinity might be part of Yuno's magic abilities. And this definitely leaves the possibility that the spell in the dungeon, while not Neverland, might still have been Yuno's spell. However, it could also have been Astaroth, Julius, or Lucius. And I also explain what could possibly be the main essence of Neverland. Maybe Yuno has created a world where he can do anything he wants. He's practically the god of his own fantasy dimension, almost like Peter Pan in Neverland. The new Black Clover chapter 356 starts right after the end of the last chapter with Yuno facing Lucius Zogratis, who tells him that he is strong, but from what he can see, it's not enough to defeat him. So let's keep that in mind. After all, Lucius has some sort of ability to see the future timeline. So he must be more or less expecting how strong Yuno can really be. As long as he smiles, everything is fine and he knows he's stronger. As soon as Lucius starts to have a negative face, then we know he's starting to get nervous. So even at the end of the chapter, Lucius is surprised at best. But to be fair, we haven't seen his face yet after Yuno cut off one of his horns. The scene then cuts to the angel paladins fighting the normal magic knights. It looks again like my paladin network theory might be true. We see how the paladins can use multiple magic abilities. Lucius must have somehow gained the ability to distribute magic abilities to other paladins, just as he distributed his siblings' blood, body, bone magic combination to all the other paladins. So it could be possible the other way around, so that each paladin can support Lucius with their magic ability, which then gives him the ability to create artificial paladins with all kinds of magic abilities that are part of the paladin network. That is at least my theory. The magic power of these angelic paladins is also extremely strong. It looks like it's on the level of a senior magic knight or even beyond, so even multiple magic knights at once don't stand a chance. It almost looks like Morris might have something to do with it. He was the one who changed the Clifford ritual so that Lucifero could appear after the second gate. So it's not impossible that Morris also manipulated the paladin spell. We have seen that Lucius sent him on some kind of mission to use his magic for the new world. Maybe this is even the paladin network. Then we see some of the more important support characters having their little moment. But even they are far too weak to take on the paladin angels. But then suddenly tiny little fairies appear everywhere on the battlefield. The next panel then shows Sylph blowing some kind of horn, which is certainly a reference to Peter Pan and his flute, or whatever instrument he plays in various versions. The instrument Sylph uses looks like the one from the famous Peter Pan statue that is placed all over the world, so it makes sense that Tabata would choose that instrument. The spell is called Wind Star Magic Neverland, a clear reference to Neverland from the Peter Pan series. This Peter Pan reference has always existed, it's not new, but Tabata has taken it to a whole new level. Until now it was just Sylph, who looks like Tinkerbell and also has the same name, Belle. And her personality was also very similar to Tinkerbell's. But now with the recent revelation, the reason for this behavior can finally be explained, because in Peter Pan, it is explained by the fact that the size of a fairy prevents them from having more than one feeling at a time. So when they get angry, they don't have a compensating feeling. And so when Sylph has her love feelings for Yuno, for example, she completely loses her mind. And now it's even more obvious that Yuno is also sort of a reference to Peter Pan. Sylph has the same or very similar pattern on her wings like Tinkerbell. But hold on, what happened to her? She's legal, she is thousands of years old, okay?
Y'all are going to jail!
Anyway, Neverland is the place where time is frozen, which is also part of Yuno's Neverland, where even Lucius can't use time magic because there's no time in Neverland. And that's a pretty important topic. As I explained in the introduction, at the beginning of my channel I theorized that Yuno might have time magic or somehow use the time magic spell in the dungeon. This theory was later replaced by the Astaroth dungeon theory, where Astaroth could have helped them somehow, or maybe even Lucius or Julius. All three characters would have had their reasons for helping Yuno in that situation. And I still think it could be possible because of the circumstances of the spell in the dungeon. Let me explain. Let's start with the fact that Neverland doesn't stop time as it did in the dungeon, which allowed Yuno to use his spell in time to save Asta. This time manipulation affected everyone except Yuno and Sylph. We see everyone in gray color, which is supposed to represent that their time is frozen. The same thing happened, for example, when Lucius stopped time for everyone except him and Asta. The similarities are obvious. The Neverland spell, however, works quite differently. Time is not simply frozen, because in that case, Lucius could still use time magic. Yuno seems to have actually been able to remove time in Neverland, or rather the concept of time, which is why the characters in Neverland can still move. The only effect is that they no longer age, because time is not a thing. This is also the only concept of frozen time in Peter Pan's Neverland. It is called the place of immortality, since one lives forever. Through Neverland, Yuno has made Lucius' time magic completely useless, because you can't manipulate something that doesn't exist. So obviously Yuno didn't use Neverland in the dungeon. Any magic that relates to a specific place is Mana Zone in most cases. Yuno only learned Mana Zone between the Elf Reincarnation and the Royal Knight exam. You can't accidentally use Mana Zone. Neverland is a magic combination of wind and star. And it's also spirit magic at the same time, which means that this spell is only possible with the help of the newly developed Sylph, not the first version, which also confirms my theory that Sylph could evolve from a mere wind spirit into something she was never supposed to be, a spirit for two magic abilities, a unique creation. Whoever created Sylph never considered the possibility or didn't want her to be used the way Yuno is doing at the moment. So Yuno has reached the god level or even acted against the will of the gods, even if not intended. Sylph was never intended to be combined with any magic ability other than wind magic. This is even theoretically impossible and will be called a singularity in systems theory, the same word that Lucius used to describe Yuno's existence with two grimoires, while mentioning the wind spirit Sylph in this context. And if you look at Sylph and her new form, she is influenced by star magic in her transformation. We see the star symbols on her wings and on this horn. There's no doubt that this form is not the fourth and final wind spirit form, but a form that should not exist. Sylph is no longer the wind spirit, but the star wind spirit. a clear singularity as I have predicted. Obviously this does not yet confirm the solar wind theory yet, but this is already a good step into the right direction. Anyway, we got a little off topic. Yuno's human star magic was only awakened in the Spade Kingdom, so Yuno couldn't actually use star magic yet. Also, Neverland is based on a spell with 2 open grimoires. At that time, Yuno didn't even have 2 grimoires. He was not skilled enough with mana control. He learned to use Sylph properly only later, when all his senses were focused on the wind element. And yet Tabata clearly made it seem like Sylph stopped time. That is a fact. So I wouldn't rule out that the time magic in the dungeon was caused by Yuno, even if it is not Neverland. But that would mean that Yuno can actually use time magic, even if he doesn't really have time magic. So here are the possibilities of how to explain this. Could Yuno possibly have something that helps him use the time attribute? For example, the magic stone. If we assume that Astaroth somehow prepared the timelines and manipulated the fate of Yuno and Asta, then it is not unlikely that Astaroth gave Yuno some of his time magic through, for example, the magic stone. Another possibility would be that regardless of how he uses the time attribute, Yuno somehow used the spell from the future into the past. Exactly how this is possible and how the situation could come about doesn't matter. There are far too many possibilities. For example, Lucius could have manipulated time or something like that. But anyway, let's continue with Neverland. Then there are also these little fairies in Black Clover, who are the main inhabitants of Neverland and Peter Pan, and have magic powers that they use to help all the people in Neverland and allow them to fly. And in Black Clover they make the Magic Knight stronger while weakening the enemies. Just like in Peter Pan, where the fairies support the children against the pirates. It's literally the same thing, so it's possible that if we look deeper into Peter Pan, we might find some predictions for future chapters in Black Clover. The reason I suspect Peter Pan was actually used as a reference for Yuno is because Peter Pan is not just a resident of Neverland, but also has an effect on the land and its inhabitants. And in Black Clover the same can be said of Yuno, since he is the one who created Neverland in the first place. In fact, there are many versions of Peter Pan, and in some of the older original books, Peter Pan explains that he actually created Neverland in his head. He is the creator of Neverland, it's his fantasy. This becomes important again when it comes to his and therefore Yuno's possible abilities. So Yuno, like Peter Pan, has an effect on his friends in Neverland. Based on the fact that Lucius in a certain way does the same with his paladins, which is more or less my paladin network theory. Link in the comments. I can imagine that Neverland also has more possibilities than what has been shown so far, so that Yuno can have much more impact on Neverland. Almost like Neverland is a dimension where Yuno is the god, so to speak. He can remove time, make others stronger or weaker, and so on and so forth, like a fantasy world. Here are some ideas which other abilities Yuno could use in Neverland. For example, he could give all his allies the ability to fly. That would be a direct reference to Peter Pan. Although many characters can fly, most characters in Black Clover cannot. That is something that only the best Magic Knights can do. It is based on mana control. For whatever reason, all Magic Knights can fly with brooms, but not without. The ability to fly would be a very useful thing against paladins. Another great idea would be things like mana support from Sylph. Maybe even the ultimate magic of his elf father Licht, which allows him to absorb the mana of his allies for himself. That would be pretty sick. Maybe even magic combination, like combining Mimosa's healing magic with Neverland, healing everyone non-stop. In Peter Pan, Peter is also described as having the ability to imagine things and create those things into reality, but only in Neverland. He can also sense danger. The part about danger is pretty self-explanatory, but the part about imagination could be pretty overpowered. This could explain how Yuno might have been able to remove the concept of time from Neverland without using time magic. Peter Pan didn't want to grow up. which is why time is not a part of his Neverland. And Yuno wanted to stop Lucius' time magic, which could be the reason why time was removed from Yuno's Neverland. However, that would mean that Yuno doesn't have time magic and someone else used that spell in the dungeon. So if Neverland is a world where Yuno can change the reality as he wants, then it works similar to Dorothy's dream magic. Only with the difference that Yuno doesn't create a dream dimension, but a mana zone that he calls Neverland. Maybe they are able to combine their magic abilities to mix Neverland with Dreamland to create fantasy in reality. And that fits pretty well with the description of Neverland in Peter Pan. It is a dream world without limits. It's described as anything is possible. Neverland is also divided into two places. The first is called Any Place, where people go when they dream, and a place called No Place, a place that is cold and colorless, where people come who are in a coma. These people are also called Lost Lives. In my opinion, this sounds a lot like paladins. So maybe this aspect will become important somehow in relation to the paladins, especially for those who are literally in a coma, a deep sleep. For example, Sister Lily. The basic idea behind this could be that with a no place aspect of Neverland, Yuno could have an effective weapon against paladins, to either fight them or even free them. So Asta would not be the only one who could fight effectively against paladins, but also Yuno. Back to the chapter, Neverland is activated. The scene then cuts to Yuno and Lucius. Lucius uses his time magic spell on Yuno, but Yuno is unaffected because of Neverland. Lucius is shocked and calls Yuno his rival. And Yuno says, "You are not my rival." Yuno turns into the spirit dive, I think even Saint stage. Then he cuts off Lucius' horn, and that's the end of the chapter. In Black Clover, when a horn is cut off, it usually is a sign that the villain is about to change the game. By the way, I'm pretty sure Lucius' paladin form isn't finished yet, so that's something to look forward to. I expect 1 or even 2 more transformations until he reaches his final form. Probably one against Yuno maybe in the next chapter, and one more against Yuno and Asta. There is not much more to say about this. Keep in mind that my solar wind theory could still be possible. Neverland is not a magic fusion like solar wind is supposed to be, but a normal magic combination. Then we also have the last wind god weapon and thus the last spirit dive transformation. Or the magic stone and with it the possibility for demon magic like demon wind magic, demon star magic, demon Sylph, Demon Solar Wind, or a 5-leaf clover grimoire, Dark Elf. Paladin form. Especially interesting here is the fact that Yuno has 2 souls. So how does that work? Maybe Lucius will be extremely evil and separate Yuno's elf soul from his human body and put it into an artificial paladin body. Then we would have Yuno star magic versus Yuno wind magic. It would be especially interesting because Sylph would have to fight Yuno, depending on which soul will be separated from the main body. Maybe the 2 souls are even the key to Yuno not being affected by the soul spell or even gaining paladin control or something like that. In this chapter, Lucius calls Yuno something like his natural enemy, probably because Lucius can't use time magic. But as you noticed, he didn't try to use soul magic either. The last time he called someone his natural enemy was Asta when he failed to use soul magic. So maybe there's also something about Yuno that prevents Lucius from manipulating his soul. And that's it for today. Let me know in the comments what you think of this new Black Clover chapter and of course my chapter review. If you enjoyed this video then please leave a like, it really helps me a lot. And if you want to see more Black Clover content then subscribe to this channel with the notification bell activated for weekly Black Clover content, theories and chapter reviews. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye.